When an avoidant comes back, the most dangerous thing you can do is confuse contact with change, because the message looks like growth, but the motive can still be the same old pattern wearing a new outfit. You see, I miss you. I've been thinking. I made a mistake. And your heart wants to treat that like evidence, like the trial is over and the verdict is finally love. But an avoidance comeback is often less about a healed heart and more about a nervous system that got uncomfortable without your presence. That matters, because if you mistake discomfort for transformation, you'll hand them the same access that once cost you your peace. An avoidant is not always returning because they suddenly woke up emotionally evolved. Sometimes they're returning because the silence didn't feel as powerful as they thought it would. The distraction stopped working. The new person didn't hold space like you did. The freedom turned into emptiness. Your absence stopped being a relief and started being a question they couldn't ignore. And here's the twist: your heart needs to understand missing you is not the same as being ready for you. You can miss a safe place and still not have the courage to live responsibly inside it. A lot of avoidants don't come back with the intention of rebuilding. They come back with the intention of checking. Checking if they still matter. Checking if you're still emotionally available. Checking if the door is still open without them having to walk through it fully. That's why the comeback often starts small and casual: a meme, a story reply, a light joke that pretends history didn't happen. They want to test the temperature without risking the vulnerability of accountability. If you respond quickly, warmly, emotionally, they get reassurance without having to prove anything. Your love becomes their comfort blanket again, and the pattern resets. So the trap is not their message. The trap is your interpretation, because your mind often hears, "I miss you," and translates it into, "I'm different now." But the truth is, "I miss you" can also mean, "I miss the way you soothed me. I miss the certainty that you'd always be there. I miss being wanted without having to be consistent. I miss the access I had to your heart even when I wasn't protecting it." That isn't evil. It's immature, but immature love still breaks people who believe it's a promise. This is why good-hearted, emotionally intelligent people get pulled back into cycles with avoidance, because you assume their return is the start of a secure chapter. You assume the experience of losing you taught them what they needed to learn. Sometimes it did, but sometimes it simply taught them that they want the benefits of you again, without doing the uncomfortable work of becoming someone who can hold you properly. The difference between those two realities is everything. The most honest way to read a comeback is not, "What are they saying?" but "What are they prepared to sustain?" Because real change is boring in the best way. It's consistency. It's slow effort. It's uncomfortable honesty. It's a willingness to sit in hard conversations without disappearing. It's an apology that doesn't demand immediate reward. It's someone who accepts your caution without calling you cold. And if that isn't present, then the comeback is not a romantic miracle. It's an emotional loop trying to restart. You need to protect yourself from the emotional intoxication of being wanted again. That rush is real. It can feel like life re-entering your body. You might think, "See, I wasn't crazy," or "I knew they loved me." Maybe they did. But love without capacity is still a risk, because the same person who missed you today can still retreat tomorrow when closeness triggers their fear again. If nothing inside their coping style has changed, the cycle will repeat, and the only thing that will be different is that your heart will be even more tired the next time you try to recover. So the healthiest mindset is this: treat their return as an audition for the new standard, not a reunion with the old version of you. You don't have to be cruel to be cautious. You just have to be clear. You can acknowledge the message without surrendering your dignity. You can say, "I hear you," without saying, "You're back in." You can allow words to exist, but require behavior to earn proximity. Because the safest truth you can live by is this: a comeback is not a certificate of growth. It's an opportunity to observe growth. And the moment you stop treating their return like proof and start treating it like a test of consistency over time, you step out of the trap that breaks most people. You stop being the person who gets relieved by a text and become the person who is reassured by stability. You stop handing out access to people who are emotionally hungry and start reserving access for people who are emotionally responsible. That shift doesn't make you hard, it makes you safe. The biggest mistake good people make when an avoidant returns is that they confuse their own big heart with a strategy, and they let kindness become the bridge back to the same pain. You're not wrong for being loving. You're not foolish for wanting to believe in growth. But if your forgiveness arrives faster than their responsibility, you accidentally teach them something dangerous: that access to you is cheaper than change. That one mistake can reset the entire cycle in a single day. Because an avoidant doesn't usually come back with a full emotional renovation. They come back with a feeling, a wave of missing you, a hit of loneliness, a sudden fear that you're moving on, and that feeling can be real. But feelings are not commitments. Feelings are not repair. Feelings are not capacity. The problem is that your heart hears their, "I miss you," and instantly wants to soothe it, fix it, reward it, because your nervous system is tired of war and desperate for peace. So you reply fast, you soften fast, you open the door fast, you start explaining your pain in a way that makes it easier for them to enter without fully facing what they did. That's where the trap begins. Your kindness is beautiful, but in this moment it can be misread as permission. You might think you're being mature and loving by not bringing up the past too harshly, by keeping it light, by being optimistic. But what an avoidant hears if they haven't truly grown is, "I can return without paying the emotional cost of accountability." So they relax, they take the comfort, they absorb the warmth, they feel your availability pouring back into their nervous system like oxygen. And for a while they look better. They seem sweeter. They text more. They show up just enough to make you believe the story you've been hoping for. But if nothing deeper has changed, the same trigger will arrive again. Closeness will increase. Expectations will rise. You'll want clarity, consistency, emotional presence. Their system will start to feel the old pressure. And because the last time they left you forgave quickly when they returned, their brain learned the pattern: distance doesn't actually cost me this person. I can always come back to reset the connection. That's not love. That's emotional insurance. This is why fast forgiveness can be risky. It's not because forgiveness is weak. It's because premature access is. You can forgive in your heart and still require a higher standard at the door. But good people often struggle with that because you don't want to be cold. You don't want to seem bitter. You don't want to lose the chance. So you overcorrect into softness. You become the calm, understanding, emotionally intelligent one again, while they get to return without demonstrating that they can actually hold what you offer. And here's the painful truth you need to hear clearly: your kindness cannot be the medicine that cures someone else's fear. It can only become the blanket that helps them avoid it. If an avoidant comes back and you immediately soothe their guilt, reassure their insecurity, and recreate intimacy without structure, you might feel like you're building love, but you may be rebuilding the exact environment where your needs were placed last. You also have to watch for something subtle: the comfort comeback. This is when they return not to rebuild you, but to re-stabilize themselves. They don't want to lose their access to the person who loved them deeply. They don't want to be the villain in the story. They don't want to sit alone in the consequences, so they reach out. And your kindness, if you give it too quickly, becomes a way for them to escape their discomfort rather than transform it. That doesn't mean they're evil. It means they're not ready. It means their nervous system wants relief more than their character wants growth. And your job is not to punish them for that. Your job is to protect yourself from becoming the place where that immaturity lives again. So the best way to respect your own heart is to change the order of things. Instead of this old sequence, words, closeness, hope, pain, you replace it with a stronger one: words are standards, time, proof, closeness. That's how a healed you stays safe. You don't rush to give them the benefits of your softness. You let them earn it with consistent behavior. You let time reveal whether this is a real return or another loop. And if you feel guilty for doing that, remind yourself of this: you are not being cruel, you are being accurate. You are not closing your heart, you are closing the loophole. You are not rejecting them as a person, you are rejecting a dynamic where your love was used as a reset button. Because the right kind of love doesn't fear your boundaries. The right kind of love doesn't ask you to pretend the past didn't happen. The right kind of love doesn't need you to be small to be comfortable. If they truly want you, they will respect the pace that protects you. If they only want the comfort version of you, they will resist the standards that require them to grow. And that is exactly why this keynote matters. Your kindness is not the problem. The timing of your access is. Most people don't get pulled back into an avoidant cycle because they don't love themselves. They get pulled back because they blur one life. Changing distinction: loving someone is not the same as giving them access to you again. And if you don't separate these two truths, your heart will keep paying rent in a house they only visit when it's convenient. You can love an avoidant and still acknowledge that their pattern is unsafe for your nervous system. You can miss them and still know that your peace matters more than their timing. You can care deeply and still refuse the dynamic that made you doubt your worth. That's the golden rule of power. Love is a feeling, Access is a decision, and a healed person learns how to honor both at the same time. Because here's what happens when you don't understand this rule. They come back with softness, with nostalgia, with, "I've been thinking about you," and your heart interprets that as an emergency. You rush to close the distance, you rush to restore closeness, you rush to prove you're still loving, still open, still safe, because you think love means immediate availability. But love does not require self-abandonment. Love does not demand that you reset to the old version of you who tolerated confusion. Love does not mean your boundaries expire the moment they feel lonely. If anything, real love becomes wiser after pain, more structured, more discerning, because you're not trying to win someone who already showed you what they do under pressure. So when an avoidant returns, the most powerful internal statement you can hold is this: "My love for you is real, and my access to me is earned." That sentence changes everything. It stops you from turning warmth into a welcome mat. It stops you from confusing chemistry with capacity. It stops you from treating their nervous system discomfort as proof of lifelong transformation. And it allows you to be emotionally honest without being emotionally reckless. Because access is not a romantic reward, it's an emotional privilege. It means you get to be close to my body, my time, my softness, my future, my healing space. It means you get the version of me that has peace now, not the version that was desperate for reassurance back then. And if you want that version of me, you don't get it through a message. You get it through consistency. You get it through accountability. You get it by showing me over time that you can handle intimacy without turning it into a disappearing act. This is where a lot of people feel guilty, because they think boundaries mean bitterness. They think slowing down means punishing. They think requiring proof means being cold. But what you're really doing is rewriting the rules of safety for your heart. You are saying, "I won't pretend the past didn't happen just to make you comfortable." You are saying, "I won't become easy to access again if you haven't become safe to trust." You are saying, "I'm not here to audition for a stable love, I'm here to participate in one." And when you understand this golden rule, your response becomes calm, not chaotic. You don't need a long speech. You don't need to explain your entire healing journey with shaky breath. You can be simple and powerful. You can say, "I hear you," and still not open your arms. You can say, "I'm open to seeing consistency," and still protect your space. You can say, "I don't do on and off anymore," without having to hate them to mean it. That's emotional sovereignty. That's what a secure version of you sounds like. You also need to understand how this rule exposes intention. A healed avoidant, a truly growing avoidant, will respect the pace that protects you. They won't rush you. They won't guilt you. They won't say you're overreacting, or living in the past, or making it too serious. They will understand that trust is rebuilt through repetition, not rhetoric. But an avoidant who simply wants access again, comfort again, emotional supply again, will resist your boundaries. They will try to negotiate your standards down. They will push for the benefits of closeness without the responsibility of stability. And the moment you see that resistance, you have your answer without having to chase clarity out of someone who thrives in ambiguity. This golden rule also protects you from the sweetest trap of all, the almost changed version of them. Because sometimes they return with a short burst of effort, just enough to get back inside your life, just enough to reactivate your hope, just enough to make you think the old pain was a misunderstanding. If you confuse love with access, you'll hand them the keys during that honeymoon window. But if you live by the rule, you'll say, "I see your effort, keep going." And you'll let time do what emotions can't, reveal the truth. So yes, you can love them. You can even wish them well. You can even hope they heal. But you do not have to place your life on pause while they decide whether your heart is worth showing up for. The golden rule of power is not about becoming hard, it's about becoming clear. It's the ability to say, even quietly, even gently, "My love is real, and my access is not automatic anymore." The three-line rejection script is powerful because it does what your heart couldn't do when you were in the thick of the cycle. It gives your nervous system structure, and it forces reality to show itself without you begging, over-explaining, or turning your dignity into a debate. When an avoidant comes back, you are standing in a high-risk moment, not because love is dangerous, but because your memory is emotional, and your body remembers the good parts before your mind remembers the cost. That's why you need a response that is short enough to keep you grounded, clear enough to protect your self-respect, and strong enough to test whether this person is returning with maturity or returning for comfort. Here's what this script is designed to prevent. It prevents you from reopening the old dynamic with a burst of hope. It prevents you from rewarding words that have not earned a future. It prevents you from slipping into emotional donation mode, where you give reassurance, access, softness, and late-night conversation to someone who still hasn't proven they can handle closeness consistently. The script is not a punishment. It is a filter. And filters are what you use when your heart is kind, but your boundaries are now non-negotiable. The 3 lines work because each line has a specific psychological job. The first line acknowledges without surrendering. The second line defines the standard without arguing the past. The third line sets the consequence without cruelty. That's the perfect balance for an avoidant dynamic, because too much emotion can trigger their defensiveness, and too little clarity can invite their old pattern back in. So the first line is simple acknowledgement. I hear you. Thanks for reaching out. I understand what you're saying. This is not you softening the door. This is you refusing to be reactive. You're communicating emotional adulthood. You're not trying to win. You're not trying to punish. You're not pretending the message didn't matter. You're just refusing to treat a text like a transformation. The second line is your standard. This is where your power lives now. I don't do inconsistency anymore. I'm not available for on and off connections. I need honesty and stability if we're going to talk. This line is the line that most people skip because they're scared of sounding cold. But this line is the reason you won't repeat your old pain. In a healthy relationship, standards feel normal. In an avoidant loop, standards feel like a threat. That's why your standard is the truth serum. If they've grown, they'll respect it. If they haven't, they'll try to shrink it. The third line is your consequence. Calm, final, clean. So if that's not what you want, I'm going to step back. If you can't meet that, then it's best we don't reopen this. I'm not moving forward without consistent effort over time. This line is not an ultimatum. It is a boundary with a spine. It protects you from being pulled into emotional limbo again. It tells your nervous system, I am safe with me now. Put together, the 3-line script can sound like this. I hear you, I don't do inconsistency anymore. So if you want access to me, it has to be steady or we stop here. Or, thanks for reaching out. I'm not available for a repeat of the past. If you want to rebuild, it needs to be slow and consistent, otherwise I'm stepping back. Or even, I understand. I need actions over time, not words in one moment. So I'm not rushing back into anything. Notice what you're not doing. You're not listing their sins. You're not relitigating every painful memory. You're not giving a long paragraph that they can cherry-pick, twist, or ignore. You're not offering instant emotional intimacy. You're speaking in a way that a secure person speaks, short, calm, self-contained. This is how you communicate self-respect without becoming harsh. Now, here's the real magic of this script. It reveals their intentions fast. An avoidant who has genuinely matured will not try to bargain you down. They won't accuse you of overthinking. They won't say you're making it too serious. They will respect your pace. They will accept that trust is rebuilt through time. They will understand why your nervous system needs proof, not poetry. But an avoidant who's returning for comfort will react to your standard like you just offended them. They may say, why are you being like this? Can't we just go with the flow? You're living in the past. That response is not your cue to explain more. That response is your answer. Because the right person doesn't fear your boundaries. The right person sees them as the doorway to a healthier future. The wrong person sees them as an obstacle to easy access. This script also protects your identity. The old you might have felt like you needed to prove you were loving enough to deserve better behavior. The new you understands that love is not a performance, and stability is not something you beg someone into giving. You require it. And if it can't be offered, you walk away cleanly, not dramatically. So when they come back, remember this, the 3-line script is not just about what you say to them. It is a promise you make to yourself. I will not confuse words with change. I will not reopen the cycle without a new standard. I will not abandon myself to keep someone else comfortable. The consistency test is the one thing that cuts through every sweet message, every late-night confession, every I miss you, every nostalgic memory dump an avoidant brings back when they want to reopen the door, because consistency is not a mood, it's a character pattern, and that's exactly why it never lies. Words are easy in a moment of longing. Regret is easy when loneliness is loud. Promises are easy when the fear of losing you spikes. But consistency requires something an avoidant pattern has always struggled with: emotional stamina when the excitement fades, accountability when the pressure rises, and presence when closeness starts to feel real again. This is why time is your best ally now. Not your anger, not your dramatics, not your long explanations, time. Because time reveals whether their return is about growth or access. A person who has truly matured doesn't need you to rush. They don't need you to instantly trust them because they said the right spiritual sentence at 1 a.m. They understand that your caution isn't punishment, it's self-respect. They understand that trust is rebuilt with repetition, not persuasion. So they show up again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Not just with words, but with predictable effort. An avoidant who has not changed, however, will start strong and fade fast. That's the pattern. They come back with intensity because their nervous system is activated and their ego is afraid of losing control of the narrative. They might be more affectionate than you've ever seen, more communicative than before, even humble, even emotional. And if your heart has been starving, this can feel like rain in a drought. You want to believe this is the new chapter. But here's the truth you must hold steady. The earliest stage of a return is not the proof of change. It's the honeymoon of regret. The real test begins when the initial emotional wave passes and they have to choose consistency without the adrenaline of a comeback. That's why your standard must be simple and non-negotiable. You don't rebuild on momentum, you rebuild on reliability. You don't measure love by how intense the reunion feels. You measure it by what they sustain when life gets boring again, when work stress hits, when your boundaries are real, when your needs are spoken clearly, when your expectations require effort instead of excuses. So the consistency test looks like this. In real life, you slow down. You don't demand grand gestures. You don't ask them to prove their love with fireworks. You ask them to show up as a stable person in ordinary moments. Do they communicate regularly without disappearing? Do they follow through on what they say they'll do? Do they respect your pace without guilt tripping you? Do they handle a hard conversation without shutting down, deflecting, or blaming? Do they take responsibility without needing you to soften the consequences of their past? The test isn't dramatic, it's boringly powerful. And here's why: this is the one thing an avoidant pattern can't fake for long. Consistency requires nervous system regulation. It requires them to stay emotionally present even when their fear gets activated. It requires them to tolerate vulnerability without reaching for the exit. It requires them to choose connection as a practice, not a vibe. So if they haven't done real internal work, you will start to see it within weeks, sometimes even days. The communication becomes less steady. The effort gets lazy, the excuses return, the go-with-the-flow language starts to show up again as a way to lower your standards. They begin nudging you back into the old dynamic where your patience covers their avoidance. This is why your power is not in how sharply you reject them. Your power is in how calmly you require the new standard. You can say, I'm open to seeing consistency over time. You can say, I'm not rushing. I need reliability. You can say, we can take this slow if it's real. Notice how none of those lines are mean, but all of them are structured. Structure is the enemy of manipulation. Structure is the friend of healing. Using time to expose intentions without drama also protects your identity. Because the old you might have thought you had to convince them you're worth showing up for. The new you understands that anyone who truly values you will not need to be begged into stability. They will simply show it. So you stop over-explaining. You stop stretching your boundaries into emotional origami. You become easy to read, not easy to lose. Your standards are clear, your reactions are calm, your availability is earned, not automatic. And if they say, why are you making it so serious? That's not a misunderstanding, that's a reveal. If they say, you're living in the past, that's not a compliment of your maturity, that's an attempt to rush your healing to benefit their comfort. If they say, can't we just be chill? After they were the one who caused chaos, that's a red flag wearing a smile. A person who is truly changed doesn't resent the process of rebuilding trust. They respect it. They understand that your standards are not the obstacle. They are the pathway to a healthier future. So let time work for you. Let ordinary days be the proving ground. Let consistency be the language you trust more than chemistry. Because when an avoidant comes back, the most loving thing you can do for yourself isn't to slam the door loudly. It's to open it slowly with the conditions that protect your peace, and watch whether they walk in with maturity or vanish the moment they realize this version of you no longer accepts love that has to be chased to stay alive. Rejecting an avoidant the right way is one of the most misunderstood acts of self-respect in modern relationships, because people think the only two options are revenge or reconciliation, and the truth is your real power lives in a third lane. Returning to yourself without turning your heart into a weapon. When someone disappears, blocks, ghosts, or gives you months of emotional whiplash and then returns with a soft hey, your nervous system can light up like an old alarm. Your heart remembers the chemistry. Your mind remembers the pain. And if you don't have a clear inner rule, you'll mistake emotional motion for emotional maturity. This is where the final freedom shift begins. Because you realize the most painful part of the past wasn't only what they did, it was what you did to yourself trying to survive the pattern. You ignored your gut. You minimized your needs. You translated inconsistency into, "They're just stressed." You called anxiety love. You accepted long silences as a normal season of intimacy. You edited your standards into something smaller so they wouldn't pull away. You carried the emotional workload because you hoped your effort would become their maturity. That is self-abandonment disguised as devotion, and it's the quiet wound you finally refuse to reopen. So rejecting them the right way is not about becoming cold, cruel, or performatively tough. It's about becoming clear. It's you deciding that your boundaries are not negotiable just because someone feels nostalgic, lonely, or suddenly afraid of losing access to you. It's understanding that love does not equal unlimited entry. Your softness is no longer a free service available to anyone who shows up when they're uncomfortable with your absence. This is where secure energy looks almost boring, because it's not reactive, it's not dramatic, it doesn't need a long speech. It's a clean sentence that protects your peace. I hear you, and I don't do on and off anymore. I'm open to consistent effort over time. I'm not rushing back. If we reconnect, it has to be honest and steady. Those lines are not insults. They are doors with locks. If they truly changed, they will respect the lock and bring the key of reliable behavior. If they haven't, they will try to guilt you into removing the lock so they can access the old version of you without doing the new work. Cruelty is about punishment and humiliation. Boundaries are about truth and safety. You're not trying to make them suffer. You're refusing to suffer for them. You're not trying to win the breakup. You're trying to win your peace. That means you don't need to drag them through a courtroom of memories to justify your caution. Your calm is your proof that you are no longer negotiable. You don't need to hate them to be done with the pattern. This shift also changes how you interpret their emotions. If they say you're cold, you don't panic. If they say you're overthinking, you don't defend yourself into exhaustion. If they try to rush you with urgency and romantic lines, you don't confuse intensity with sincerity. A healthy person won't need you to shrink so they can stay. A healed avoidant won't be threatened by your standards. They'll be grateful you're willing to rebuild carefully. An unhealed avoidant will resist your clarity because clarity removes their favorite hiding place, ambiguity. Refusing to abandon yourself means you keep your pace even if your heart still loves them. Love can exist in you while you still choose distance. Love can be real while you still require proof. You are finally loyal to something bigger than chemistry, your future self. The version of you who never again wants to spiral at midnight because a two-word text reactivated your hope. The version of you who doesn't want to earn consistency like it's a prize. The version of you who wants love that feels safe in ordinary days, not just intoxicating in reunion moments. So you respond with emotional sobriety. You let time do the revealing. You don't reopen intimacy until you see sustained change. You don't confuse missing you with being ready for you. You can be warm without being wide open. You can be polite without being pliable. You can be forgiving without being available. And if they leave again when they realize this version of you won't accept the old rules, you haven't lost love, you've escaped a loop.